Thank you. And I welcome this opportunity to update members of the House on the significant developments that have taken place over recent months. In respect of Brexit, it hasn't gone away. A process whose pace has not slackened in recent weeks and months, despite the unprecedented global COVID crisis. The withdrawal agreement provides the basis for the immediate way ahead. It has put in place the transition period that runs to the end of this year. This means that the UK, though no longer a member of the EU, is treated as a member of the Single Market and Customs Union. It protects EU-UK citizens and businesses and provides continuity while negotiations are underway to agree the basis for a new relationship. Through the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland, it upholds measures to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland and to protect the integrity of the single market and Ireland's place in it. This is why it is important that over this period we see the full implementation of the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. As Michel Barnier has said, the faithful and effective implementation of the withdrawal agreement is absolutely central to the progress of the negotiations. This is key to protecting citizens and to ensuring peace and stability in Northern Ireland. For the EU, Brexit represents a substantive change in our relationship with our closest neighbour. This is especially true for Ireland. It will fundamentally affect how we cooperate and do business together in so many different areas. To meet this challenge over the coming months, we have three broad, interrelated streams of work to do, which I'd like to address. Firstly, future partnership negotiations. Secondly, implementation of the existing withdrawal agreement. And thirdly, the readiness work for the end of transition, whatever that may bring. Firstly, the EU-UK negotiations have now begun on future relationship, with 2 rounds having taken place so far. The most recent was from the 18th to the 22nd of April. As with so many areas, COVID has created serious challenges. The second round of negotiations was delayed and meetings were eventually held via video conference. Further rounds are scheduled to begin on May the 11th, that's next Monday, and the 1st of June. These negotiations are between the Commission Task Force led by Michel Barnier on behalf of the 27 Member States and the UK led by Chief Negotiator David Frost. They address a broad range of issues across 11 tables, from trade in goods and services to transport and energy to law enforcement and mobility and many other issues. They also include important cross-cutting elements on level playing field and governance, necessary to protect fair and open competition in any future UK-EU relationship. This is especially important given the proximity and depth of the trading relationship, and that the deal that the EU is offering the UK is unique, an unprecedented and broad economic partnership with zero tariffs and zero quotas on goods entering the single market of 450 million people. The EU negotiating mandate was agreed at the General Affairs Council on the 25th of February. It reflects the breadth and ambition on the part of the EU for a close and deep partnership with the UK, providing a generous and fair foundation on which a new EU-UK relationship can be built. Of particular importance for Ireland is that the mandate maintains a focus on protecting the Good Friday Agreement and on ensuring that issues arising from Ireland's unique geographic situation are addressed, as well as the common travel area. Protecting the Good Friday Agreement and the gains of the peace process in all circumstances continue to be key priorities for Ireland. These priorities are shared by our EU partners and I think well understood by them also. But the limited level of ambition for the future partnership on the UK side will influence what is possible to achieve. Ireland is working as part of the EU27 to ensure that our collective approach to these negotiations reflects our values and interests. Ireland inputted into these discussions to ensure that our priorities were reflected in the terms of the FTA with strong level playing field provisions, fisheries, transport arrangements and police and judicial cooperation. The atmosphere of the talks has been relatively constructive. However, following the second round of negotiations, Michel Barnier has been clear that significant gaps remain between the two sides in a number of fundamental issues. These include level playing field, criminal justice and law enforcement cooperation, overall governance in relation to the implementation and maintenance of any agreement, and of course fisheries. He said that while serious difficulties lie ahead, with political will, realism and mutual respect, they can be surmounted. More progress is needed for June, when the EU and UK will jointly take stock of the negotiations, as well as the implementation of the withdrawal agreement ahead of the high-level conference with the UK at the end of June. Michel Barnier has emphasised that clear evidence is needed that the UK is advancing work on the agreed procedures and controls needed to operationalise the protocol. I spoke with Michel Barnier on Monday of this week in advance of further future partnership negotiations next week. The Taoiseach, Minister McEntee and I remain in contact with our colleagues in other EU member states as well as with the UK, obviously. Time is tight, even more so given the challenges that COVID-19 poses. There have been calls for an extension to the transition period, including from significant sectors within the UK. Under the withdrawal agreement, such a decision, which is one to be made jointly between the EU and the UK, must be taken by the 30th of June. At this stage, it's not helpful to speculate. However, the UK Government has repeatedly said that the transition period will end on the 31st of December and that they will not seek an extension. We continue to work to be ready for that date as a consequence. In terms of the implementation of the withdrawal agreement, work towards the implementation of the withdrawal agreement, including the protocol in Ireland, has now begun. Whatever the outcome of the current negotiations, the protocol will apply from the end of transition. I think it's important to say that. A no deal on a trade agreement at the end of transition will not be the same as a no deal if it happened before a withdrawal agreement was signed up to. But it would still be hugely disruptive from a trade perspective. So this ensures that we avoid a hard border on this island, come what may, protect the gains of the Good Friday Agreement and safeguard the integrity of the single market and Ireland's place in it. This work will be carried forward through the Joint Committee, which held its first meeting on the 30th of March, and what's called the Specialised Committee, which specifically focuses on the implementation of the Irish and Northern Irish Protocol, which met on the 30th of April. Ireland participated in both meetings as part of the EU delegation. Discussions took place in a constructive atmosphere. The Specialised Committee took stock of work needed regarding implementation. Both sides agreed on establishing the joint consultative working group, which will provide a forum for discussion and information exchange in the application of the protocol, and Ireland welcomes these important steps. Full implementation of what was agreed by the EU and the UK in the withdrawal agreement and the protocol is fundamental for all EU member states. A new partnership can only be built on the full and effective implementation of the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. The Commission last week published a paper that considers some of the practical steps that will be needed in the period ahead to implement that protocol. The protocol must be operational at the end of the transition period, and that's important. It's critical, therefore, that work moves forward to put practical operational arrangements in place to implement that protocol. These must be communicated to economic operators in good time so they can prepare also. Clarity on this work is particularly important to give reassurance and to give certainty, particularly given all of the uncertainty that's linked with COVID at the same time. As I've said, some details will be finalised in the period ahead, including how, through the work of the joint and specialised committees. However, the broad outline of what is necessary is already clear, and in many ways these committees are about implementation, not any form of renegotiation, that's for sure. So this must include action to back up the important commitments in the protocol on continuity of rights, safeguards and equality of opportunity as set out in the Good Friday Agreement. I welcome the fact that the UK has stated it will respect all its legal undertakings under the withdrawal agreement. It reiterated this at the meetings of the joint and specialised committees, and I think it's important to state that because that is a very significant confirmation of the intent of the British Government. Implementation of the protocol will mean some changes, however. Northern Ireland will remain in the UK customs territory, but will continue to apply the rules of the Union Customs Code, that's the EU Union Customs Code, and relevant EU legislation. The Commission has been clear that there will be a need for checks, some of which already exist, on goods entering Northern Ireland from Great Britain. At the same time, it's important that the implementation of the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland works for Northern Ireland and for the all-island economy as a whole in as smooth a manner as possible. You will have seen commentary on the question of an EU office in Belfast. Article 12 of the protocol provides for EU representatives to be present for activities relating to the application and implementation of the protocol. I hope and I'm confident that agreement can be reached through the specialised and joint committees on how the EU involvement envisaged in the protocol can operate in an appropriate and sensible way. The framework is there to reach agreement once the practical implementation approach of the UK is clearer, and that's the step we need to focus on now. On other specialised committees, just quickly, over the coming weeks, the work of the other specialised committees will also be taken forward. These include work relating to citizens' rights, financial commitments under the withdrawal agreement, Gibraltar and the sovereign air bases in Cyprus. And Ireland will be paying close attention to this work as it impacts on our interests also. In terms of readiness, Brexit comes at a time when businesses are already struggling in the face of the challenges brought about by COVID-19. With less than 7 months to the end of the transition period, we remain committed to doing everything in our power to ensure that citizens and businesses are as ready as they can be for the end of transition. The Government moved swiftly and decisively in terms of COVID-related supports to businesses. Brexit preparation will necessarily be part of a wider business recovery agenda, and we will look at how best business supports can be deployed in support of businesses in the context of Brexit challenges also. But the UK has left the EU. At the end of the transition period, the UK will leave the customs union and single market. Even the best possible FTA between the EU and the UK will impact supply chains and trade flows and result in checks and controls in both directions on EU-UK trade across the Irish Sea. Earlier today, I hosted a meeting of the Brexit Stakeholders Forum, which provided an opportunity to hear from business representatives on how we can assist their members in the coming months. Supporting supply chains and trade flows remain a priority. Significant investment in infrastructure and systems in our ports and airports continues. I've discussed the UK land bridge with Michel Barnier, and he understands the importance of safeguarding this important route to market into the rest of the EU. The Government's preparedness work will be closely aligned with progress on the negotiations and will evolve as elements of the deal become clearer. As the talks progress, we will roll out communications programmes covering specific areas. As before, departments and agencies will continue to meet with key stakeholders. Until the conclusion of the transition period at the end of this year, there will not be immediate changes for business and citizens. But make no mistake, that change is coming and we need to be ready for it. Ireland faces these changes with the mutual solidarity and support of our EU partners and with all of the strength that EU membership brings. As we progress the negotiations on EU-UK future relations and the implementation of the protocol, managing Brexit will remain a priority for the foreseeable future. We are determined to rebuild, strengthen and re-energise relationships north-south and east-west for the benefit of all of our businesses and all of our people. The Government will ensure that Ireland's interests are advanced during the coming period ahead and that intensive work continues to prepare Ireland for our post-transition relationship with the UK. Finally, can I say that the challenges we face in the context of COVID-19 make Brexit in some ways even more complicated. But also, I think it raises the stakes even higher if they weren't high enough already. The idea that that we would knowingly allow a second significant negative impact on our economy and our trading opportunities with our closest neighbour after the impact of COVID-19, which has been and will continue to be significant, by not managing to agree a sensible trading arrangement between the EU and the UK.
Thank you.
Is something that I think will focus minds in the months ahead.